大家好，好久不见，真的好久不见. I'd like to thank my good friend Sun Li Jun for inviting me to give yet another remote video presentation, this time on the topic of the foundation of future entertainment, 8K, 5G, and AI. Now you may be wondering as an artist or a content creator, okay, who cares? These are just typical engineering buzzwords, technological wizardry that sure is faster, cheaper, whatever. How does this relate to me as a content creator? Why should I care? The reason you should care is because we're moving into fresh new directions of interactive, immersive content creation that are going to affect people in powerful new ways in their homes, at their places of work, really anywhere that people find themselves. These technologies, in order to express themselves to their fullest extent creatively, rely on these three aspects: 8K resolution, 5G bandwidth, and artificial intelligence tools to express themselves in a way that really makes a difference in our lives, even if we're just talking about entertainment. So what we're going to do is briefly, but hopefully with some substance, address each one of these in turn: 8K resolution, 5G, and AI, in terms of what they are, what they can do for us as creators, and where they're going. So let's talk first about 8K. 8K is, as most of you know, the successor to 4K resolution. And at CES in 2019, the first 8K televisions were unveiled to the general public. And it's predicted that by the year 2023, only about 3% of all devices will be 8K ready. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but as history has shown with 4K, where the predictions about how fast people would transition to that technology were actually low. People actually adopted that technology quicker than was anticipated. The same thing is forecast for 8K technology as well, on the consumer level and also on the broadcast level. So HD TV resolution, whether it's 4K or especially when it's 8K, places huge demands on throughput and bandwidth, especially if you're talking about streaming this. So compression algorithms need to be improved, and also the bandwidth capacity needs to be broadened. This is one reason that things like 5G become important, because the pipe, the digital pipe that's necessary to pump 8K video through in real time is significant. So by 2018, the Red Digital Camera Company had produced 3 cameras that were capable of supporting 8K resolution. And as mentioned, by 2023, this is assumed to be a common format for most consumer electronics, and certainly for professional electronics. Filmmakers are also eager for the opportunities that 8K video affords, because if they've shot something on film, whether it's 35 millimeter, 70 millimeter, what have you, and they want to convert that to video, to digital, 8K conversion is a much higher quality than going to 4K. And this revolution goes down even to the mobile level, where, as most of you know, Samsung Electronics in 2020, they announced that the Samsung Galaxy S20 can now support 8K resolution. As film studios and broadcasters learned with the 4K revolution, a higher resolution gives a better quality to the viewer, but also creates more considerations for the company. For instance, 4K, the advent of HDTV, revealed more flaws in everything from the background paintings to the makeup of a news person, stains on clothing, etc. More stuff shows up in 4K than in 2K, and that goes even more so for 8K. When you're shooting in 8K, you have a lot of artifacts, a lot of imperfections that can show up, which might add to the gritty realism of the project if it's a fictional film piece, but might be a problem if you're on the set of, let's say, a talk show or a news program. So an example of some of the artifact issues you can run into with 8K are evidenced by the film Lawrence of Arabia. So for the 50th anniversary, Sony decided to do a re-release, a restored re-release of the film. And they were transferring from the original film print to a digital intermediate to do the work. And when they were looking at it in the screening room, they noticed these weird fingerprint-like artifacts in the corners of the frame. They're like, what the hell is that? And what they realized was that those fingerprint artifacts were actually places on the film strip where the film emulsion was peeling away from the substrate because of the heat, had peeled away because of the heat in the desert where they were shooting. And the 8K video was picking this up. These imperfections in the film itself were being picked up by the 8K. So what they had to do after they had transferred it is hire another company to remove these artifacts so that they can properly exhibit this without the imperfections. So it just once again goes to show that with every advance, there are new problems created that go along with the new opportunities. In 2016, the director James Gunn, who was working for Marvel, said that the movie Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the sequel, would be filmed entirely in 8K, and in fact it was. And that was very successful and also allowed things to be done for visual effects and so on that were very beneficial to the post-production crew and really set a precedent for what was going to happen going forward in terms of the continued use of these high-resolution video cameras. So at this point, in terms of gaming, pretty much all of the major gaming companies, so PlayStation, Microsoft with the Xbox, are moving to 8K, and then also we're getting 8K support pretty much on every editing system that exists, the only limitation being the hardware you're running. So Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, Lightworks, etc., they're all supporting 8K, but it's a question of whether or not your computer supports 8K because it's a pretty heavy load. And of course, when it comes to virtual production with LED walls and so forth, higher resolutions are necessary to give the dot pitch that's required for a seamless combination of the foreground live action elements with the projected digital background elements in a way that doesn't produce moire patterns and other artifacts. So the move to a higher resolution, whether it's in the creation of the content or the transfer of the content from one medium to another, is really becoming something that's no longer considered an extra, but really an essential. Okay, so we're talking about high resolution, talking about bandwidth. That leads us to 5G. 5G, as the name implies, is the fifth generation. This is the successor to the 4G networks, which now are so common. And there's the hope that there will be 1.7 billion subscribers for 5G by the year 2025. The main advantage of 5G is that it has a greater bandwidth and gives you higher download capacity, up to 10 gigabits per second. That's pretty fast. But due to the increased bandwidth, it's expected that these networks will be used as general internet service providers for pretty much everything, laptops, desktop computers, and compete with existing internet service providers like cable and so forth. It's also going to make possible the Internet of Things and also machine-to-machine technology. The main issue with 5G is that the higher frequency has a shorter range, so you need smaller geographic cells to support the network. That means more towers, more physical infrastructure. Also, these shorter wavelengths can be impeded more easily by windows, walls, and other materials. So the issue of blockage can become a factor. In fact, for this reason, many facilities, such as hospitals, etc., have said that they may or may not go to 5G and stick with cable instead, a direct line that ensures that they won't suddenly have a loss of connection that could result in an operation, for example, being disturbed, or some other problem that could have life or death consequences, as opposed to something as insignificant as making a movie or a TV show or watching one. There are three main application areas for the enhanced abilities of 5G. One of these is enhanced mobile broadband, and this is the most commonly used now. Another is ultra-reliable, low-latency communications. And then finally, what's referred to as massive machine-type communications. So currently, as of 2020, only the enhanced mobile broadband is in relatively wide use compared to the other applications. So basically, enhanced mobile broadband is using 5G as a progression from 4G to provide broadband services with faster connections, higher throughput, and more capacity. And this will obviously benefit areas of high traffic stadiums, cities, concert venues, apartment blocks, etc. The ultra-reliable, low-latencycy communications are necessary for mission-critical applications, you should say, that require uninterrupted and robust data exchange. So security, police, hospitals, etc., that require weather stations that need to have an uninterrupted flow of reliable information as quickly as possible, and in some cases with very large data sets, such as if you're examining a storm front, for instance. The third application area, the massive machine type communications, this is what applies to the Internet of Things. So the devices that you have in your house or will have in your house that basically make your life easier and will be connected to and powered by the internet will require this 5G technology in order to operate seamlessly, efficiently, and basically make your life hopefully easier than it currently is. We'll see how that goes. The first country to adopt 5G technology in a widespread way was South Korea in 2019. However, as I think all of you know, China took the lead globally with 5G application as of 2020. As of 2020, China had over 200 million new 5G connections. That's 87% of the global total. 87% of the new connections in 2020 for 5G were in China. This number is expected to hit 822 million by the year 2025. And the rapid growth of this technology in China is no accident. This is a big initiative, and it's backed by the country's continuous construction of 5G networks, the towers we were talking about, the cells which are needed to support the transmission, and also expanding the end device ecosystem. What does that mean? It's great to have a network, but then you need to use the network to do something, to power devices, right, to stream content. If you have devices which are 5G capable but you don't have the network, or if you have the network but you don't have the devices, then you have one half of the equation missing. So China has been taking the lead in making sure that both the network and the devices are being supported, developed, advanced in tandem with each other. Furthermore, studies have indicated that Chinese consumers are more eager, more willing to upgrade to 5G than any other consumers anywhere in the world. There's really a hunger in China for what 5G can do for people personally, professionally, etc. And so China is really looking to be the dominant force in 5G development and also 5G application going forward, basically worldwide. So let's talk about artificial intelligence. There's a lot to talk about on this topic, and I've discussed it plenty live at the Beijing Film Academy when I was there in person, also online. I currently teach it now. It is an area that has great potential and also great misunderstanding surrounding it. People simultaneously don't give AI enough credit for what it can do, and they also give it too much credit. You know, they think that the robots are coming to kill us, and everybody's going to lose their jobs, and there won't be anything for anybody to do but sit around and be useless. And none of that is exactly the case. There are considerations in terms of making sure that, like with any technology, as the technology comes into our lives and has an impact, that we try to maximize the positive and minimize, the potentially negative consequences. But really, when it gets right down to it, artificial intelligence is a tool, just like any other. I mean, my watch is a tool that can tell time much better than I can, much more accurately than I could if I just guessed right now what time is it. But that doesn't mean it's smarter than I am. It simply means it does that job better than I do as a human. But as a human, I use that tool for my own creative purposes as a filmmaker, as an artist. And very much the same goes for AI. When people talk about AI, you'll hear them use terms like strong AI and weak AI. Strong AI generally refers to artificial general intelligence. This is the kind that actually doesn't exist yet. It's relatively easy, I shouldn't say very easy, relatively easy to program a computer to beat a human being at chess or at the game of Go, but it's a lot harder to program a computer inside of a robot to go down to the corner and order you a cup of coffee and bring it back properly, go up the stairs, etc. These basic things that human beings can do, that children can do, are more or less impossible. I shouldn't say impossible, but very challenging for AI in its current form. We have seen many advances in these areas. Boston Robotics and other companies have created some very impressive demos of artificial intelligence, inserted into robotic structures that are doing things that are impressive and in some cases a little bit scary. But the basic rule of thumb is that in many ways, the simpler and more human something is to do, the harder it is for an AI to grasp that thing. But the more repetitive something is to do, it's easier for an artificial intelligence to do that thing, to do that job, and perhaps to displace that person. If you're working in a bank, for example, and you're just processing papers over and over and over, you're probably going to be replaced by an AI at some point if you haven't been already. The creative fields that we deal with, the art and design areas, are going to be impacted by artificial intelligence, but I think in a good way. I think that we're going to see ourselves having very powerful tools at our disposal. And quite frankly, this is already the case. When you look at visual effects, there are many AI systems that are being used to generate particle systems to simulate weather in film visual effects scenes, to simulate human speech, even to do automatic dialogue replacement, where as the different languages are being substituted, the phonemes of the face are being adjusted with a digital mask and then blended in seamlessly to avoid that effect of having the dialogue transposed from one language to another, but having the mouth not quite match up. So again, these are good things. These are powerful tools that we can use to really help ourselves to be more creative and expressive in our work. And especially when it comes to immersive interactive experiences, if you're going to create an environment in which you have characters who interact with you, the viewer, and respond to you, where you can have a cause and effect relationship, you need to have a certain level of intelligence built in. This level of intelligence doesn't have to be the strong AI I was referring to. This could be on the level of the weak AI, the AI that does something very particular, like play a game of chess or a game of Go, or calculate a certain distribution of particles in a space, right? Something very particular, but something that the AI can do very, very easily compared to a human being, and the human being can then use in creative application to a greater end. So in short, much like your mobile phone, which has become such an intrinsic part of your life that it's almost like your second brain, right? You really are not the same person. You're not as functional. You're not as smart without it, being able to quickly look something up or contact someone. The same will go for artificial intelligence, and of course that will be integrated into devices like your phone, etc., and eventually probably directly into your head with a chip or so forth, or at the very least in a pair of glasses, so that as you're talking to somebody, you're scanning information on them to remember, all right, Joe, we saw this together back in 2015 and da-da-da, and the synthesis of the artificial information, the artificial intelligence with your natural intelligence, right? And your design thinking as a creator is going to be a powerful combination. And it's not going to be anything special in the future. Here's the thing. If you are not up on this technology, you will be left behind. It's not going to be giving you an advantage or an edge. It's going to be keeping you up with everybody else. But it's going to be allowing everyone to do things that previously were unimaginable and would probably seem magical to people, just 20 years ago. These technologies that I've been covering here in brief, 5G, 8K, and AI, are not only of academic interest to someone like myself, but also professional interest on a production level. So I work as a producer, as many of you know, in animation and also in live action and in immersive media, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, all the realities. And the opportunities that are afforded by these technologies are things that I'm employing right now. So I have a new company with my wife, Fong. It's called Telretel, and we are focused on virtual production techniques, not only for the execution of content, but also the development phase, for workshopping different story ideas and character ideas, and using things ranging from digital backlots to motion capture to digital puppetry, which is a subset of motion capture, VR visualization, virtual production. All of these areas combine together to produce digital story worlds, rely upon the bandwidth of 5G, the interactivity provided by AI, the visual quality and fidelity that 8K resolution can afford you. These technologies really are allowing something that we didn't necessarily know we needed, but once we have it, we can't imagine living without it or going back to the way life was before we had it. So thank you for listening to what I had to say on these topics. I know that this is very, very top line, very high level. There's a lot more to dig into here, and we don't have enough time in this forum or in this particular video. But if you want to contact me to discuss these things further, or to ask questions, or even to show me things you're doing in these areas, I'd be happy to communicate with you. I'll put my email address up here. And again, I want to thank my friends at the Beijing Film Academy, Sun Jun, everybody for thinking of me, remembering me, and inviting me back to give this presentation. I hope to talk to you guys again. 谢谢大家.